Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Joel, you mentioned before we got started that you love today's topic. And I have to admit, it is apropos in a number of different ways, not the least of which is the basic concept, which is being present in the now, right now, is exactly what I violated earlier today.
Absolutely. Yes, you did.
I completely lost track of time. I forgot what I was doing. I was enjoying myself. So in that sense, I was in the middle of the now.
Maybe too much in the now, to be honest.
Leaning that way a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to know that it is possible to push that envelope too far. I mean, there is a moderation piece to all this.
There's always a balance, and maybe that's a little too much now today, but we're good. You're good.
No, well, some people, I mean, you actually have bragged about having ADHD. That was me demonstrating ADHD without being, diagnosed with it.
Exactly. That's one of the gift that keeps on giving. ADHD.
That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, of course, this came from a post that you shared on Facebook. And in that post, it was a quote from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, which I thought, first of all, I had no idea that he was so into this. I mean, I did a little reading afterward, and this was a big deal for him.
Oh, he was more than the emperor. He was sort of the in my mind, I call him sort of the father of Stoicism. He wasn't the father, but he was the one that really just took it to another level.
Yeah, leading voice of it. Yeah.
Leading voice is a better word. He just, it's sort of everything sort of before him that he took in, his influencers, and then everyone after him. He just was very much Stoicism in general. He lit it on fire, I believe.
One thing that intrigues me about Stoicism, we could probably just go briefly into what Stoicism is, but one of the most interesting things from my perspective is what it's not and what it does not emphasize. It does not have much emphasis on emotion.
No.
And that's really fascinating to me.
Well, most people, when you hear they're very stoic, it's usually used in a negative term for it could be positive, but usually it's a negative term, and it's almost void of emotion, void of response. They're right. Stoic. And that's not what Stoicism is. And
not really, no.
Not really. But
it is a characteristic, but is not the main driving force.
Right. And it isn't about not having emotion or not feeling things. It's simply about accepting, basically Stoicism in a nutshell is all this has happened. Let's turn the page and move forward. That's Stoicism. It's like, we can have a panic attack about it. We can do it, or we can just accept it as it is and move forward. Stoicism is no drama. It's simply accepting things as they exist and moving forward.
Isn't it interesting, though, that it did turn into a popular belief that it was anti-emotion?
Yes. Because a lot of people don't like being told. A lot of people don't like the concept of Stoicism in general, so they're viewing it as you're saying being void of emotion. No, have all the emotion you want, but all the emotion in the world is not going to change the event. That's Stoicism's thing. Have the emotion, freak out, do what you have to do. But at some point, we're going to have to, wipe our snot and simply say, let's go forward. We got to fix this. Yes, my leg got cut off, so I could spend 7 weeks really upset about that, or let's put something on it and get going. It's sort of that's how it was. And it gets lost because, especially in today's society where so much emphasis is on trauma and doing the work, a lot of people think Stoicism dismisses that. It doesn't, but again, it's a perception.
I would go a step further. I would say that one of the main driving forces behind the perception that Stoicism is anti-emotion is actually a strong counter-belief in negative emotion. In other words, the critics of Stoicism are themselves driven by negative emotion. And because Stoicism is saying, I'm not going to give any power to that, that's how they come to the conclusion that Stoicism is anti-emotional, which is kind of ironic, because you could also argue that the critics who are so heavily oriented toward negative emotion are anti-positive emotion.
Yes, I agree.
I
And
mean, you can make that argument either way, really.
Stoicism is, and I've studied. So it's one of those things. I've done deep dives on Stoicism. I consider myself a practitioner in Stoicism as well. And it's something that, it's a philosophy that just is very, it matches my personality. I have a direct tie-in with it, with the law of attraction. I believe it goes hand in hand. That's how I sort of discovered it, because a lot of Marcus Aurelius's quotes, were the various, particularly Greek philosophers. They are very much, to me, it sounded like law of attraction, and many of them. It was just like, okay, we're going to be moving forward. Let's focus on what we want. What is next? There's several there's several stories about people, with implementing Stoic thought in their life, way back in the day, about this happened. Are you happy? Well, it happened. So the happening is, what Stoicism is trying to say, if I want to bring it to all the shoulda, woulda, couldas are irrelevant. Did it happen? We move on. Did it not happen? We move on. It's just, it relieves historical stuff, and it really ties in today's topic, because Stoicism is about, like, right now, like the power of right now, the power of where you're at with it, and all your solutions, no matter what problems you're facing or have experienced, all of your solutions to any of those problems or any of those things exist only right now.
Yes.
That's the only solution point. You can fear tomorrow. You can be upset about it. You can rethink. You can overthink all the things you said. Your breakup, where you can constantly replay it over again. But nonetheless, any solution, any power you have, only exists in this moment.
So it derives from the same root as the root that you appeal to when you say, I don't remember, I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, but this is pretty close to the way you say it. The past is gone, the future is uncertain. All we have is the present.
Right now. And then when you understand that, it's so much easier to deal with today, instead of all the crap. And trust me, this. Most of our audience who know me knows this. I have a lot of past.
You think?
Yeah. And a lot of it's not pretty. But no matter what, none of my actions since I turned my life around in 1995, none of my actions has ever erased the actions I had before that. I just moved forward from that point. And I can't go fix what I did. I did horrible things, in my gambling addiction. I'm not proud of those. But all the worry and apologies, it doesn't change the fact that I did them. But I gambled for probably 13 years of my life, pretty bad. I have been in recovery now almost 30 years. My moving forward past that is what has, to me, where my power existed. My power never existed in undoing the past. I couldn't predict the future. I just had to learn to accept today, and that's the power of now, the power of focus of where you're at. That's the only energy that matters. But yet, most people totally ignore right now and either worry about what's happened or fear what is about to happen, totally leaving the place of power where all that exists.
Now, in the modern era, there is a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, fairly
Yes.
famous in our circles. Do you think he was directly influenced by the Stoics, or was that kind of in between thing, like, we'll accidentally also be talking about the same thing that the Stoics did, but I just came up with this independently?
My belief, because if you've read the book, it's a good book, but I mean, to be honest with you, it's one message, power now. So
over and over again.
There's a lot of different things, but there's a lot of stuff that makes me think he was influenced by that. And
Okay.
just because some of the way he talks, some of the examples he uses. Also, Ryan Holiday, who wrote "Obstacle Is the Way." For those that had never read that, he's directly a gigantic Marcus Aurelius fan, and that is the sort of he's the modern day guy that's sort of the new guy into Stoicism, and he does a really good job of explaining the history of it all and why it matters. And he also makes a connection to the law of attraction and sort of a taking action. Mel Robbins, the author who wrote 5-Second Rule, doesn't know it maybe, but she's a practicing Stoic. But just because 5-second rule, forget, hey, problem, move, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. She's always going forward, biased toward action, always moving forward. That's stoicism.
That's an interesting next connection to bring in, the idea of the connection between the power of now, the present being the only thing that we have, and taking action. Because I know action is a big piece for you. It always is in every conversation that you and I have on this show.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess that the question becomes, well, to what degree is Stoicism perhaps one of the great vocal advocates for taking action?
I think it's one of the foundations. It's accepting things as they are, and then finding the areas you can control. One of the most famous examples of that, while I'm not a big gigantic fan of the 12 steps of recovery, I'm very much appreciative of the concept of accept the things you cannot change the things you can, and know the difference. And that's sort of that sort of matches this. So the only action you can take is stuff that's in your direct control. And the remedy toward any anxiety or any problem, to me, is action. Taking action relieves that. And then, to be fair, I like to represent as well. You know this with me. I am not a believer in the law of attraction that states I can sit on my couch and manifest $1 million.
You have mentioned that once or twice.
I have tried, and I think it's fair. Most people would agree. I use the law of attraction on my behalf. I think you would agree with that.
I would say yes.
Yeah, but I have, I'll have a caveat to this as well. But I believe action is required in conjunction with the mindset. That's when it's the most powerful. You energize action by the law of attraction, but some action, and I don't really care what action, any action amplifies, it lights the fire. The connections that take place from that action is influenced by the law of attraction. I'm also aware people disagree with me on that, and I have no problem with that. If it can work for somebody, if you can sit on your couch and make $1 million, go do that. That's fantastic. I just personally have never had any luck with that theory.
Yeah, I think it can be done. I'm not sure anyone is patient enough to wait for it.
That's a good point.
I mean, you literally can attract anything into your living room. That's really what we're talking about. You're sitting on the couch in your living room, right?
Yeah.
The question I would ask is, how much stuff actually comes through your living room?
Nothing.
Not that much. I mean, it's a pretty small subset.
Well, and I also have mentioned one of the law of attraction practitioners that is well known is Joe Vitale.
Yes.
Yeah. We talked about him. He's an advocate for you don't have to do anything. Yeah. You don't need that. But yet he simultaneously has 1,000 programs running 24 hours a day. Yeah. If you've ever been on his mailing list, it is like the most bizarre. You get at least 22 emails a day.
Yeah.
With something. So this is like the hardest working man claiming that he never has to do any work to attract. And he I don't know if he ever sits still. He's constantly devising new stuff. It's just he's not practicing what he preaches from my perspective. He's doing well. It seems like he does real well.
Yeah.
But he said, you don't need to worry about it's like the attraction factor is one of the books he wrote. And it basically is saying, well, you see the mindset. Well, he's out taking action. You wake up in the morning, you've had 7 emails overnight from his robot or bot that's sending out. It's just always a new program, always a new certification. It's always a sale. Usually it's $99.99, but on sale for today for $4.99.
Oh yeah.
But if you got to, and that's it. Now, I'm not being critical of the man. I'm just simply saying that a lot of people that they say that, but yet they don't have that concept of action. So where it applies to our topic today is, if today is all that we have, any power that exists right now technically is right. It's 7:13 p.m. Eastern time. In reality, this is our only power. So with that, if I'm not going to take any action during that period of time today, I can plan on action tomorrow. I'm not saying there's not a problem in getting a plan together, but if I don't take action within today, I have no power. Tomorrow may not come. Yesterday is irrelevant. I can't fix it. I can go forward, but all of this takes place in today. So the power of now, or the power of today, uh, I use this all the time with clients who are in distress for whatever reason. But I can get them to say, like, and you would agree with this. I'll use you as an example. No matter what you have going on, at 7:14 today, you're good. You're right now. At this moment, you feel fine. We're having a great conversation. We're good friends. We always have a great time during this. So this moment, no matter what's going to happen, at this moment, we're good. And from that place, you have full access to everything. It's tomorrow I have access to nothing. Yesterday I can't retrieve access. And that's sort of the point.
Isn't it interesting? A phrase you used earlier kind of ticked this in my head. You talked about how we can only do what's within our own power to do. Isn't it interesting how often people try to do things that are outside of their reach, that are outside of their power, that involve, doing something about somebody else?
Yes. Clearly, if you've ever listened to Think and Grow Rich, I'm sorry, I apologize. Ask It Is Given, or The Law of Attraction. They hit on this a lot. Esther Hicks is constantly talking about, you can't manifest somebody else's behavior. You can't make somebody, there's a lot of people that come into the law of attraction with the concept of, I want my husband to do something differently.
Right.
So I'm here to make that happen. And when you understand, you cannot create for someone else on behalf of someone else, doesn't mean you can't be supportive and help them create for themselves. But you can't, if your husband doesn't want to change, you're not going to manifest him changing. It's just not going to happen. You don't have that power. You can change how you respond to him. That might fix change for him, but you're not going to go fix that, or you're not going to go do that. So your power exists not only in now, but also only exists in the things you have control over, which are very limited, but they're very powerful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that is true is also a conundrum for some people. For instance, I think of there are many teachers in this LOA realm that we talk about. One of them is Neville Goddard.
Yes.
And Neville Goddard taught something that has actually contributed to the confusion on this. I don't think he intended to. I think his intention was much more in alignment with what you've been saying there. But he loved to give examples of real stories that happened in his life, that people he knew who were able to manifest things and so forth.
Right.
And one of the things that he talks about in a couple of his books is the idea that you can influence somebody else, in the sense that you can get them to think about you at the same time you're thinking about them. You can get them to if they need to have something happen, you can make it happen by influencing them through a thought process. If you read on the surface, that's what it says. The part that, this is the reason why I think it is actually confused, the part that the advocates of that position skip over is that all of the stories that he tells are about people who did want to connect with each other.
Yes.
He doesn't tell a single story about two people who had differing motives or competing motives.
That's a great point, Walt, because it happens very frequently where I will think about a friend, for example, somebody I haven't talked to in a while, and almost inevitably, I hear from that friend. They will say, yesterday, I was randomly thinking of you. I don't know if it's the exact same time, but it was ironic that we both thought of each other. And I think there is a connection, because I'm not trying to change them, but there's a connection to that.
Right.
When you were going through difficult times and we were talking and trying to do that, I was sending positive energy to you, healing energy. I was supporting you. That was you wanting to receive that. So, and you had several other people on board with that as well. So that's different. That is me supporting but if you were just hell bent that you didn't want to talk to me, and I'm not going to change that for you. I can't. But you were searching. The law of attraction was in play. You were looking for that positive reinforcement. I was sending it. So that was the synergy involved. That's a totally different topic than the idea that I'm going to make somebody love me again who doesn't love me anymore, or any of that. We get lost on that a lot of times.
And the reason we get lost, I believe, is this exact point, the point of whether or not the two people involved are, quote, on the same wavelength. But by the way, a phrase that Neville Goddard never used. He never talked about wavelength. But but the idea of wavelength, the idea, it's, how many teachers have taught it, including Abraham. You have to have a similar wavelength in order to receive a signal that the radio station is sending out. And the same thing is true for vibrating with somebody else. You have to be on the same wavelength with them. And that means you have to be emotionally in a similar place. You have to be focused on relatively the same topic. And if you can do those, it's just like electromagnetics. You're going to reinforce each other. I mean, if you have two terminals putting out a pulse at a certain wavelength at the same time, they're going to reinforce each other. They're not going to, well, depending on how you aim it, they could potentially fight each other, but that's because you're pointing them in opposite directions. But overall, the two pulses are going to reinforce each other. In fact, that's where a lot of power generation comes from. It comes from lining up a whole bunch of power generators to increase the amount of power.
Absolutely. And Esther Hicks talks, and I always get the two books confused, so I don't remember if it's Asking is Given or Law of Attraction.
Yeah, but they're pretty much overlapping. Yeah.
They are. They're basically the same book. No disrespect. I love them both, but they are overlapping. She talks about, like somebody asks, isn't it counterintuitive to say opposites attract? And she points out, somebody looking to sell a car doesn't need to attract another person that's looking to sell a car. They need to attract the opposite, somebody who's looking to buy a car.
Right.
So it's the intent of the connection. It's what you're trying to. So it's like you're saying, when there's intention, there can be a connection. When I'm looking to hire someone, somebody is looking to be hired. That's not an opposite. That's the law of attraction. A lot of people get off on that. They get mistaken from that. So
because it's easy to confuse opposites with complements. That's a compliment.
It's a complementary energy, and when I'm looking for something, I need. I'm out there looking for it. I don't need to run into somebody else that's out there looking for the same thing.
Right.
In a lot of cases. So the power, the law of attraction, the reason the power of now, or living in today, or whatever term you want to use, is so important. When you narrow down where your power exists and how you can then implement the law of attraction on your behalf. So it's really these micro minutes, it's these microseconds, it's the time right now. That's where your energy is. So, and we know, you and I are both believers in you're making sure your emotions and the vibrations, the energy, how you're feeling is in the right mindset in those moments. So if you find yourself, the biggest thing to do is adjust that emotion, adjust your mindset, use the emotional guidance scale, whatever your version of that is, see where you're at. But you always want to be vibrating on a level of what you want to attract. And you don't have to do that all the time. You just have to do that right now.
Yeah, there is a key distinction right there. You only have to, you don't have to do it all the time, just right now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, there's no difference between them.
I know, but I'm making a point.
But that's what's so interesting and amusing about it. There's literally no difference, but they sound different, don't they?
They sound different, yeah. And that was sort of the point of it. It's like, it manage that, because we try to manage the stuff that we can't manage. But when you realize managing your emotions, managing how you're feeling, the ultimate power to me, these are my words. These are not, and you've heard me use this word a million times. The discovery that my perspective created my reality, and I was in charge of my perspective, changed everything for me. That was the awakening that those words awoken my understanding of all this. All that matters is my perspective of what's going on, so my energy will respond to that. And the greatest gift we've been given is the ability to control our perspective.
I think actually the first time I was kind of faced consciously with that concept in a way that I would describe as a serious way, meaning I had to take it seriously. I couldn't just dismiss it. That first time, it was kind of like it hit me between the eyes and knocked me over.
Yes.
Because it seemed, oh my God, how could I have missed this, first of all? And second of all, how the hell do I explain what happens in life? Because it's my argument all along has been, well, things happen to me. They're outside of my control. And this is saying I created it all. Like, well, What are you doing? You're blaming me for everything that I've done wrong in my life now? Is that what this is? That's what it feels like the first time that you experience it.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm not trying to quote word for word the Abraham Hicks books, but blame has no place here. It's not about blame.
Mhm.
It's simply understanding. And we as humans want to fill in the blank. So you're saying it's my fault. Well, first of all, it is your fault. Let's be clear. So let's start with that. I mean, I'll be really clear to trigger some people out there. But you didn't intend to make it your fault. I'm not saying you intentionally did these things, but our energy is what attract the life we have today is what I grew up in chaos. My energy that I grew up around is what eventually led to my own addiction. It eventually led to all that stuff. It also is the same energy that allowed me to become the man I am today. So my perspective looks at that and says, did my childhood and all the stuff I went through, did it mess me up or did it make me the man I am today?
I know that for myself, one of the arguments, I guess you could say, that Abraham makes they don't really treat it as an argument, they treat it as an explanation. But one of the explanations that they give to help understand this concept is one of the ones that are the more controversial ones along the lines of what we're talking about here.
Yes.
It has to do with the innocence of the very, very young. One of the big complaints that people make is that, well, how can you say that that's true? Because there are innocent babies that get hurt and so forth. And the counter argument that Abraham Hicks makes is that we all come into this life as fully experienced, fully developed beings who have been doing this for eons. When I first heard that did two things. First, it again hit me between the eyes, like, holy crap. I'm like, that's definitely going to set off some that's going to set some feathers flying, let's put it that way. But the second thing was that is validation that we always have been and we always will be.
That topic is almost taboo in the sense that
Oh yeah,
it's the one that turns most people off. That's where
absolutely.
most people get stuck. And so the idea, because we look at everything from the human perspective that we look at. I now understand, and these are my beliefs only, I think you share similar beliefs, that my energy existed before my human life began, this human life began, and it will exist after this human life ends. I also believe I'll probably be back 1,000 more times or whatever. And I don't know if it's always on this planet or whatever, but when you understand it from that perspective, when you see somebody like who have profound mental disabilities that are never, you start to understand some of it, that this is a blip. The existence, the difference between somebody who lives for one day or somebody that lives for 100 years, when you look at the timeline of everything, you can't tell the difference. The dot on the line is no different. 100 years or one day is it's no different. It's the equivalent of, are you going to go drop take an eyedropper with 6 ounces of water and go drop it in the Pacific Ocean?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do. I mean, it's not measurable. If you go drop,
well, you can measure 6 drops. I mean, you lose track of them instantly, but you can measure 6.
Yeah. But if you go dump a gallon of water in the Pacific, it's the same result.
Same thing.
The same thing.
The same.
So, or 100 gallons or 1,000. It isn't to get to 1 billion gallons and I don't remember the exact number, but to raise the Pacific Ocean 1 inch, it would take something like, I forget the number of trillions. It was a stupid number.
Yeah. Kind of encouraging, really.
Yeah. So the only reason that it matters is when we focus on the stuff we have and we focus on what we wanted. There is no stress in this moment when you adjust no matter what I'm facing tomorrow. At this moment, things are fine. And so I'm able to use the law of attraction right now at my best optimal time. If I'm not at my optimal time, I need to work on not fixing what's going to happen tomorrow. I need to fix this idea that my mind isn't where it needs to be. I'm not manifesting. I'm not sitting on the energy I want to do. So my job is to get my energy right. My perspective needs to be adjusted. I'm a human being. Most people that hear me talk will say, well, you never have a problem. I have as many problems as anyone else. I really do. I have things that happen. This last week I was dealing with Justin's health insurance, and I was like, oh, and
Mhm.
then I was dreading dealing with it, and I had to call and oh, it's very complicated, but shockingly, I got it done and it's all solved and no problem. And it was not near as hard as I had made it out in my mind to be. But before I made those calls, I adjusted my perspective and attitude. I didn't call with frustration. And then the person that answered the phone picked up my energy. We had actually just, she's like, oh my goodness, it's such a great call for a Monday. And it turned out to be really good.
Mm.
And it was great interaction. But if I would have come on with expecting a bad interaction, this could have gone the wrong way. But my
Sure.
point is, preparing for that. So the power of now just reminds us that life is happening. We're all going to deal with stuff. There's in the next 6 months, there's all kind of chaos going on. We got some wacky elections coming up. We
Yeah.
got a constant news cycle. I don't, as you know, I don't watch the news, but there's some people apparently very upset about something that happened at the Olympics. Not exactly sure. Don't want to know. But the idea that, like, a guy at the gym said, do you believe that craziness at the Olympics? And I go, the Olympics are on right now? Oh, okay. I mean, and I just walked off like I don't know. To be fair, I did know the Olympics, but I just said that.
So
Yeah,
it was deliberate. That was a deliberate blow off.
yeah,
Okay.
it was, but it was just, in the reality, I don't even know what it is. Whatever's going on does not affect my day. It doesn't affect my energy. Doesn't affect. But yet, I said the other day that we're coming into the election cycles. To me, are just called the season of offending.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
So we're coming on offensive season where everybody is going to be horrified by what the other side says, and they're going to vilify the other side. In reality, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. My control lies in today with me. I don't control the election. I will vote. I'll vote for the candidate that I feel best represents. I will also say, wow, we don't have the greatest choices in the world, but I will vote. And it's like, what do we have here? But I'm not going to look at it. I can't control the rest of the stuff. I don't want to debate everybody about every little nuance. What my job is to do is keep doing my job, my actual career, which I love. I go to work every day with a great perspective. I worked out today. I'm taking care of the things I need to take care of on a daily basis, and my life continues to improve. As I've told you many times, we've been through a few election cycles since we've been together, and I don't care who wins. I'm going to be in a better off position than I am right now at the end of the next presidency. In fact, that really frustrates several of my friends that said, Joel, do you really believe we are better off than we were 4 years ago? And I go, I am. And I'm going to be better off 4 years from now. It doesn't matter. I am better off. I will continue to be better off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in great health. I'm financially secure. My career, everything. I have new nuances in my career. I've been working on getting some public speaking engagements in place. I'm very excited about what's coming next. So that's my life, and I'm expecting to be that way. But all that takes place right now. And not worried about what's going to happen in October, November, December, not worried about all these other things, because those are irrelevant thoughts that just get in the way of where your real power exists. If you imagine the law of attraction, as you said earlier, and I love this connection you and I discovered together a long time ago. The law of attraction is vibrational. So I like to use frequency like you did, just because frequency we can understand. 102.1 is the radio station I listen to. I can turn my radio dial to 102.3 and get nothing, because we don't have a station to match that.
Right.
But on 102.1, I get my station.
Yep.
It has to be the frequency. So the frequency itself is what I'm attracting. So the same energy applies the law of attraction. So being in control of your frequency is part of what you can control. But the idea that you think you're going to, when you're feel that everything's falling apart, your frequency is actually tuning into all that's wrong. If you want to go over a list of everything that's wrong right now in the world, it's big and deep. Or
Yeah, I mean, if you dig deeply enough, you can always find something wrong.
absolutely, and there's people
And
that
by
say,
the way, you will.
"Oh, we are,"
It's
but
guaranteed.
yeah, I have people that said, "Well, you're just not living in reality." And I stole this Abraham Hicks statement. I go, "I am. It's just my reality.
Yeah.
I am living
Yeah.
in reality. It's my reality. It's a reality I created. Where I have a reality where I thrive. I feel great. I love my job. I help people. They in respond. They do well. And half of what I'm talking to people about is letting go of the things they think that matter. Most people are worried about the things that don't matter and totally ignoring right now, where
Mm.
everything that really matters that you can affect is right now.
I have two stories that came to mind while you were talking about what goes on with the election cycle and all the worries about what's going on in the world and great divide and popular opinion and all that kind of stuff. First story comes from my barber. I went to get my hair cut this past week and hadn't seen him in a while, and for obvious reasons, because that's the only time I ever see him is when I get my haircut. But I'm talking with him, and he likes to just talk while he cuts. I usually just kind of sit kind of quiet there. Sometimes I react or I respond in some way, usually along the lines of what we talk about here. But this time he was going on about, can you believe how crazy the world is right now, and all that, that same repetitive thing over and over again. So I let him go through it, and then I said to him, does that touch you or me? He says, no, not really. I said, oh, okay. And that was the end of the conversation. It was done.
I love
There was
that.
nothing else to say.
Yeah, I do that similar statement often. I don't know how that's affecting me right now.
The second thing I wanted to tell you is I wanted to tell you about an interesting interlude I had, and I won't say which side of the political divide the person that I was interacting with is on. I'll simply state that person made a really interesting comment. Really interesting comment was, I wonder if the fever is finally breaking and they finally are beginning to wake up. And my response to him was, do you have any idea how many times they've said that about you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you really live in a world, and your reality, the perspective you have is that the other side is evil and trying to stop your way of life, and that's being sold to you. You buy into that, and then your reality, your life lives as if that's the case. I don't give any of that any. Somebody said the other day, how much is gas now? Whatever. I don't know. What does gas cost? I don't know. It's whatever it is, you fill it up. It's just it is. If you don't have the money, don't drive. I mean, it's really that simple. And not that I'm not trying to be flippant about people that don't have a lot of resources, but the idea that my world is not affected by the price of gas. If it got to $35 a gallon, I might cut back a little, but if I need to, so yeah. But you get my point. Just and I'm not. All I'm just saying is what you focus on is what you get back. If I start talking about, I continue to be I still lift very heavy weights in the gym every day. And I have some joints that are achy and stuff like that, and I probably train a little too hard for my age, maybe. So if I'm sitting there and going, my right shoulder hurts, it really hurts, then I could do that, and then I start to notice that it does really hurt. It'll hurt more versus. Yeah, I mean, the fact I can still do what I do at my age, and yes, it's going to come with a little shoulder stiffness. That's okay. That's all right. I don't need to, but the perspective dictates how severe that is. I've used the example of me having surgery years ago for my gallbladder, and just as soon as the surgery was done, I got up as anesthesia rose, I left. I'm good because I expected to heal. The doctor's like, you got to spend the night. I'm like, I'm good. Don't worry about it. And and I didn't take any pain pills. I he's like, well, your stomach hurts. I'm going, of course it hurts. I just had my stomach cut open. Come on, it hurts. But what that opiate's not going to make it not hurt. It's going to make me not care that it hurts.
Mm.
And
Yeah, important distinction.
Yeah, but you can do that. I know a lady that under hypnosis had a root canal without any painkiller and just sat there and didn't move. And I mean, they were hammering away at that thing and just so my point is the mind, the power of now, learning to every day. It's been a little cooler lately for us. I mean, cooler. It's only 90 today. It wasn't 100.
Yeah.
But we had a couple days of 100 a few weeks ago, and there wasn't a single person that I didn't run across that goes, "Sure is hot today." I'm like, well, yes, and saying it over and over all day in no way helps it be cooler. You pay more attention to it, So a lot of it is, what you pay attention to during the time that you're conscious and awake, which is right now, is so powerful, and you get to choose that. And we're not a victim, even though we believe we're told we're a victim of so many things. We have power over our perspective. And there are some countries where it would be really hard, where you don't have, despite what we have, we pretty much have freedom here. We have the ability to come and go as we please. And your perspective is yours to control, even if you're under, like I always said, if you were to try to imprison some spiritual person, not locking them up in prison is a perspective. They're like, okay, well, I'm gonna go meditate in prison. It's just, that it's one of those things that you have to realize. Prison is a perspective, and I know people that are more in prison in real life than people that are actually behind bars that have sort of learned to figure that out. Because when we operate under the premise that we're victims and we have no control over things and we're at mercy of all this happening to us, that's a version of prison to me.
And on the topic of not being victims, I just want to comment on something you mentioned earlier about the woman who had the root canal without an anesthetic. I just wanted to make it clear I am not volunteering for that one.
Okay.
That's not something I want to bring into my life.
and I am also not there either. So I
fair enough, right?
I don't mind some stuff, but wow, that one.
No, thank you. Enjoy, but not me.
She was under hypnosis by a hypnotherapist that she has worked with for over 5 years. So they had a really good ability. The more times you get hypnotized, particularly by the same person, you can easily get into super deep trances much easier than the first time. So she's very
trust level. The trust level does it.
Yes, absolutely. So in fact, they're at a point now where none of the normal lead up is there. He just simply like snaps his fingers when she's there and she's under. So and she has to be willing to do it too. It's not like the stage hypnosis where you're gonna, she has to be mentally preparing for that as well.
And even the stage hypnosis, you do have to have subjects coming on stage who have a susceptibility to it.
Absolutely, that's very important, because if you're not susceptible to it, there's people that just won't be hypnotized.
Right. Yeah. Which would kind of ruin the act, but
but
the people who do that, they know how to decide which ones they're going to bring up on stage. It's it's pretty straightforward for them.
Yeah, they do, and in fact, there's sometimes hypnotherapists will give sort of a hypnotherapy quiz ahead of time to suggest is hypnotherapy something that's going to work for you based on how you are. Your susceptibility factor is a big thing there. So they'll look at it. And some people, I know hypnotherapists said, it's just not going to work for you. It's okay. You can do self-hypnosis, you can meditate, you can still do those things, but I'm not going to be able to, get you in a trance at this point.
Now, there is something else I want to bring in under this general umbrella of what we're talking about today. The idea of we only have now, we only have the present to do things, and our perspective and our choices, what we select to give our attention to, controls what our experience is, which, because I think we've addressed that topic pretty thoroughly, but there's a piece that we haven't really touched on, which is it's a piece that often gets mislabeled as toxic positivity.
Mm.
And what that really means is ignoring something that you don't like with the hope that it'll somehow go away, which is not the same thing as changing your perspective about it.
No.
But
No.
it seems to be on the surface. I think that's why people get so confused about it.
Well, I have some people that have misinterpreted a lot of what I've said and believe. They said, well, you're not, you're just ignoring the problem. If you know me well, I don't ignore my problems. I deal with my problems.
I
My
can't ever remember you talking about something you ignored. You didn't.
No,
I don't think the
no,
word has even come up in our
no.
conversations. I brought it up just now. But
Yeah, yeah. I address my problems or issues, but what I do it with the law of attraction in mind. I bring the energy, the positive energy. What am I? It isn't like, oh, I'm going to ignore that and that's going to happen to go. Some story like, yeah, I ignored that. If I need to be able to address things, but there is a way to do it from a non-victim standpoint.
yeah,
There is a way to do it from, I'm going to find the solution. There's always a solution. I've never not found a solution for any of my stuff. It might not be solutions I like sometimes, but I'm always able to get there. But it always is on the other side of me getting my perspective right, being able to apply that and not have to fall into the mindset of, I know people that are unrealistically positive and taking no action. I know, like, well, my rent's due tomorrow, but I want to manifest my rent, and no, you're not. It's not going to
good luck
happen.
with
But
that.
good luck. Let's cross our fingers. So if there needs to be action in that moment, you need to be taking action. And then within that action, that relieves you from the idea action. And here's something that popped in my brain, and let me process this with you. So maybe me and my action and stuff, maybe it's hard to be toxically positive and take action at the same time, because action is sort of defeats that action. Toxic positivity is simply, I say that it doesn't exist, I'm ignoring, I'm taking no action. Whereas once I start taking action, then solutions arrive, then you're moving forward with stuff.
I think the way I look at it is the term toxic positivity is actually a bad term.
I
It's
agree.
a misleading term because what it suggests is that it's the positivity that's the issue,
Right.
which is not true at all. The truth about so-called toxic positivity is that there is a toxicity that someone is ignoring by pretending to be positive.
That's it. Perfectly said. Much better than what I was trying to get across there. The ignoring the idea that that, like, there is something wrong. There is something that I need to address.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to bring law of attraction energy, positive energy to that solution. I'm going to bring that's law of attraction in play in my mind. Just simply saying, if I just act like that's not there and move on, that's a terrible way to do things. Or if you have someone who is you can even get more serious situations. If somebody's in danger and you just want to ignore it or whatever, we need, this is real life, and we need to understand that taking action or being able to honestly, positivity is never bad. So toxic positivity is not a negative term, as you're saying, toward positivity. It's the ignoring piece. It's the ignoring piece, whereas those things, there's a lot of things that aren't going to go away.
And the reason the
Action
ignoring
things.
piece doesn't work, there's a very
Yeah.
solid reason why the ignoring piece doesn't work, and that is you're not actually ignoring it.
Yes.
And the way we know that is because you're focusing on it long enough to say, I'm ignoring it.
Yes. Well, and you've heard of the studies where people say, well, don't think about an elephant wearing a red scarf and a hat.
Right.
Well, you right off the bat, without even, you'll project that image just based on your knowledge.
And,
So
and definitely don't make the scarf red. That's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, of course. And maybe even, and don't put like eyeliner on him or something
Yeah,
either, because
right.
that would be crazy. But we could do that, but you keep adding stuff to the elephant. Like, I don't even want to do that, but I am. So but it's the same arena. But circling back, that everything we're talking about, the only time that we can do any of these things is right now. That's it.
Meanwhile, that poor elephant is trying to figure out how to get the eyeliner off.
Yeah. I mean, I can't.
sympathize. Yeah.
There's a vision of him with those clubby little feet they have, or gigantic feet they have, trying to put that eyeliner on. So
Yeah.
maybe they have elephant makeup artists. Let's assume they do, for that state.
I think he's probably sucking a bunch of water up into his snout and just pouring it all over himself to get the damn thing off. I
That's
really
probably
believe
the
that's where
case.
it's going.
Yeah. I would agree with that. But yeah, so this is what makes it to me the idea. As you can imagine, there's some people that my stance towards victimhood or victim mentality rubs people some wrong way. There's a lot of people that want to own their identity is the negativity. I know people that there's a big trend toward that of a lot of young people will on their social media profiles. Like I saw one the other day, this lady, young lady, she wrote, "I'm borderline personality disorder, schizophrenic, I'm whatever gender," and there's 7 or 8 things. And I'm like, okay, so your identity is all of those things. And I'm not saying she doesn't have all that. I'm not trying to judge that, but that's her identity on her Facebook profile or her Instagram profile. That's her identity.
I mean, I would think one of the first things you want to do is introduce her to your young friend Marcus, who has
exactly.
Stories, right?
Yeah. Let's reframe that, because we've had entire shows built on the what diagnosing does to people, what diagnosing. So when I'm sure a lot of these young people are self-diagnosing themselves anyway, and because there's no doctor that gave her all 7 diagnosis, because a lot of them are overlapping. They couldn't go together, but yet she's all those things, and it makes it like, so her definition of life is always going to be filtered in, I'm schizophrenic, I am this, I'm depressed. And earlier I mentioned my ADHD. I'm clearly ADHD, and I view it so differently than most people probably view ADHD. I love my ADHD. It's a superpower. It's a brain. My brain's amazing. It is scattered. It does do crazy things, but it's so efficient. I love how it works. So my diagnosis in no way is a negative. I just consider ADHD as an evolution of the brain. I really believe that.
And you've repeated that many times to the point where I'm starting to believe it too. So that shows how powerful being on the same vibrational wavelength is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that I convince my young clients, particularly that are dealing with it. Instead of coming in, well, I'm mad because of ADHD. I said, you kidding me? You're mad because you have a super brain? You're mad because of this? And all you haven't done is how to figure it out. Once we figure it out, you're incredible. And then the ones that buy into that turn their lives around in a dramatic way.
I want to bring in one last point. Well, we have some time left because we're running near the end of our normal time span on doing the show. One more thought that was coming to my mind as we were talking about the positive toxicity concept, badly named as it may be. Nevertheless, that's what we'll refer to it, because that's what people like to call it. And it is that when people are focused on that, when they're locked in on it, they tend to overlook certain things that they're doing. I'll give you the example of somebody who, like you gave the example earlier, somebody who is trying to attract enough money to pay the rent tomorrow because they don't have the rent money. If we only have now, which I think we have pretty well laid out, that's all we really have, then the person who declares that instantly raises a question in my mind. The question that it raises in my mind is, well, what's taking you so long? I mean, your now has been rent devoid for quite some time. I don't know a better way to say that because it's timeless, right? But there's been this long chunk of whatever you want to call it where you've been rent devoid. What's taking you so long?
That's the point, and that's the whole point, because 3 weeks ago, rent being due on the 1st was not a shock. It wasn't information that person didn't have. Rent was due in 3 weeks. So within the now of 3 weeks ago, we need to be working on it. So what happens is you get up to 2 or 3 days before the rent's due, and now you've done nothing. So now it becomes you start limiting the actions that even would be effective.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there's still actions that are effective, because and people say somebody gave me that scenario and tomorrow's the first, so, well, now what do I do? So first I would point out action should, attention to this 2 weeks ago, when you, in your moment of now, then that's when this is not new knowledge. But since we are here, there are some options. Why don't we call your landlord, tell them that, that you are running late, you're asking for time, and then blah, blah, blah. Then, let's reach out to people who may be able to loan us money. Can you get extra shifts at work? Let's look at all the possibilities. But sitting on the couch and saying, I'm manifesting my rent tomorrow is not going to be an effective way without some type of stuff going on like that. So, and as you're saying, next month, this may be a shock to you, but rent's going to be due next month as well.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. So let's not get to that place where you get so stuck in, it'll just work out, and then be horrified that I might get kicked out of a place to live.
I know that mindset though, and I know you do too.
Oh yeah.
We both have times in our past where we have experienced that mindset, where we've been in it. It's a horrible mindset to be in.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Because literally you can't take your mind off of the fact that it hasn't happened, even though you desperately want the change to happen, whatever the change is, in this case, being able to pay the rent. But whatever it is, you desperately want it to happen. But every time you look at it, all you can think about and all you can see is how it hasn't happened.
I have two quick stories, and the first one is funny. In the middle of some of my worst times, I was living in a condo in Florida, and I was gambling like crazy. So every penny I made went to gambling. Mm-hmm. So every month the electric bill was due, and I would call with some excuse of why I couldn't pay the electric bill. They were very generous. They would go and go and go. So I just assumed I could do that forever. I did not know they took notes, So,
oh yes, okay.
So I called middle of August, hot and terrible. And so I called, oh my goodness, I'm out of town at my grandmother's funeral. I'm unable to pay to pay the electric bill. Can you give me a week or two till I get back? And the lady gave me the line that blew me away. She said, Mr. Elston, this is your sixth grandmother that has died. We're not going to be extending. Your electricity will be cut off tomorrow.
Which is not terribly funny for you at that time, but it's funny right now.
No, it's very funny. So yeah, that perspective. The other is a much more positive law of attraction story. Is early in my recovery, after I moved out of the transitional living home I was in, I got a very, very small rental. It was perfect for me. It was part of a house, but it was a separate entrance. It was just, I felt so empowering. But I was waiting tables, and at that time, it was probably mid-August. And that time, the island, the restaurant that I worked at down in Florida near Anna Maria Island, was very tourist oriented. Well, the busy season is the beginning of summer, toward the end of summer when school's out. There's just nobody there. So it was really slow at the restaurant. And, I had another job or two, but everything was real slow. So I was just not going to make it. So every month I was, paying rent, and I never missed rent, and also had a restitution payment back to the state of Florida. So I worked very hard to do that. So I was going to be about $100 short. It was $78 short. I figured it out, and I wasn't scheduled to work at all. So I had a decision to make. Do I pay my rent and then tell the restitution that I'm going to be late, or do I do vice versa? And in my mind, if I didn't pay my restitution, I was going to go to jail. That wasn't accurate, but that was the belief I had at that time. So, a lot of pressure. And my landlord was really good. I never missed a payment. It was really important that I pay that rent. So the reason that's relevant is historically, when I was in serious financial trouble, and I've been in recovery over a year and a half at that point. And historically, that used to make me go gamble, or I used to use gambling as a way to, let's see if I can't go win that money. And I would end up losing all the money and then can't pay either.
Right.
So I'd already decided I'm not doing that. So I was trying to decide which one I'm going to do. And it was back and forth. So I get a call from the restaurant during the middle of my thought process. This is when I really realized there is something to this law of attraction that really matters. And the manager of the restaurant said last minute, because it's like 3 PM, said, Joel, can you get out here? And my money was so tight. I said, I only have gas money, so I'll give you $10 in gas money. And back then, that was like a lot of gas money.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. And I said, well, even if I make $50, I'm still going to be $50 closer, and that would be better. So I decided to go out there, and it was this big party, and you can never know how these tips are going to go at these big parties, But so the manager told me, he said, Joel, if you come out, I'll guarantee you $100.
Okay.
And I'll pay you $100 no matter what. If you don't make that in tips. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's fantastic. So right off the bat, I was given an answer after I decided not to go gamble. It's like the law of attraction. And so I go work at the restaurant. These were very fun people. I ended up making $270 that night.
Wow. Okay.
And so I was like, oh my gosh. And so the idea that once I decided now I didn't manifest by sitting in my house, but I was given the opportunity to take an action that alleviated that. And after that, I never ran that close again. And now this is a period over the years. I'm not saying I got financially well right away, but at least I was able to do that. So my point is, you can, even when it's there, but adjusting my mindset, because the negative action then would be to go gamble, where I promise you I would have lost all that money, and then
Right.
rent doesn't get paid or restitution doesn't get paid, and I'm really in bad shape.
Mhm.
This way, everything got paid the next day. Nobody knew it was close. I was able to fill up my gas tank, get an extra pair of whatever, and things were great. And that took place all within that moment of realizing I'm desperate. That desperate mindset doesn't work. Ruling out gambling is an option to go do it. And then that magical phone call happened, and I was at the restaurant. It worked out great.
By the way, I do want to point out, and I don't mean to say this to negate anything you've said. I just want to point out, though, that you did manifest that from your home. You had to go actually collect it, but the phone call came while you were at home. So we can honestly say that money came to you just while you were sitting on your couch trying to figure out what to do.
But and again, it's semantics. But the money, if the money wouldn't have come if I didn't take the associated action.
You had to take the action.
Yeah, the offer of action was there. I accepted I didn't say, no, sorry, I'm waiting for it to show up at my door. Thank you for that opportunity, but I'm not. Yeah. And I've heard some people say that, like turn down the opportunity.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to manifest it. I don't need action.
Yeah.
So actually it goes back supporting exactly what I was saying. There's an action that's going to be involved. Your mindset brings about the action. Sometimes an action you don't know what today. In this case, it was a very clear action. I was so grateful, had a great night of work, made plenty of money, and it just was fantastic.
Yeah. A fantastic way to wrap up the conversation too. Starting off with Marcus Aurelius. I mean, seriously, I learned something. I had no idea that he was that big of a leading figure in the Stoic movement that originated during those times.
Have you read Meditations?
His?
Yes. I mean, the book called Meditations.
No, I have not.
That's a good one. Also, if you haven't read The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, you should read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the recommendations.
Sure.
Passing it along to the audience. Yeah. So thank you very much, Joel. We'll catch you next week. I mean, I don't know what the topic's going to be. I'm sure you'll tell me just by posting something on Facebook.
Certainly.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.